morning,
Política Lingüística.
Mrs. Franquesa,
Bon dia,
General
senyor Isidre
Director
Sala,
of Language
Director
Policy.
General d'Afers Multilaterals i Exteriors de la Generalitat.
Good morning to the
Us
representative
agraeixo
from
de
the
veritat,
Generalitat.
sincerament, que ens hagueu volgut acompanyar
thank you
en
for
aquest acte tan especial.
coming to this event,
Tot i
such
que
an
de
special
manera ben
event,
excepcional ho feu des de la
even
primera fila.
though we're going to be
La
here
vostra
on the
presència
first
aquí
row.
baix
Your
només
presence
té sentit per destacar
only
les dues
makes sense
absències de la
in
taula, que les
order
hem
to
simbolitzat
highlight
de la manera
the
que
two
tots coneixeu.
absences from the table
El meu
that we have
agraïment al Govern de
symbolized.
Catalunya pel seu
My
suport i la seva implicació
Gratitude
en la
to the
tasca de LingüaPac
government of Catalonia
s'hauria d'haver adreçat als
and
consellers de Cultura i
the
d'Afers i
Counselor
Relacions
for
Institucionals i
Culture
Exteriors,
and
que aquest any,
International
amb motiu del
Affairs,
nostre
who,
30è
because
aniversari,
of our 30th
havien volgut
anniversary,
acompanyar-nos durant l'acte
were
d'avui.
willing to come to this event today.
Tots sabeu, però,
You all
que
know,
no hi són degut a
but
unes
that
circumstàncies
they
d'una
aren't
gravetat
here
extrema.
because of very serious
Empresonar
circumstances,
representants legítims d'un poble
imprisoning
per defensar un
the
mandat electoral,
legal
l'objectiu
representative
del
of
qual era
a
votar
group
en
of
un
people of a
referèndum,
state
és una mostra
because they
d'autoritarisme
wanted
i
to
d'intolerància de normes
organize
vivencials.
a vote
I
is
suplantar un govern
an
sense tenir la
very
representació
serious
necessària de la
event,
ciutadania,
and replacing a
una
government
vulneració de
without the
drets
support of the
fonamentals sense
citizen
comparació en un
is a
país
violation
democràtic
of
i en el context
legal
dels
rights in
fundacionals
a
de la Unió
democratic
Europea.
state and in the context of
Davant
the
de fets
European
com
Union.
aquests,
Facing
s'evidencia
events
més
like
clar
that,
que mai com és
it is
imprescindible
very clear
treballar
how
per la
important it
comprensió
is
i el
to
respecte
work
dels valors i les
on the
creences dels
respect
pobles.
of
I com és
people's
important
beliefs and
afavorir el
values, and
diàleg
how
per
important
sobre
it
de
is
les
to favor
imposicions.
dialogue
Un
instead of
diàleg que exigim
imposing.
ara i aquí per
And
revertir una
we
situació que
demand
no s'hauria
this
d'haver
dialogue
produït mai.
to revert a situation that shouldn't
La
have
imposició
happened.
de les idees per la
The
força,
imposition of
sigui de les
ideas
armes o
by
d'una
force, either
legalitat que no
weapons
respon
or
a les
a
aspiracions
legality
dels
that doesn't
ciutadans,
respond to the
no
aspirations of
pot ser de
citizens,
cap manera
can't be
garantia de
a
convivència.
guarantee of
Els membres
coexistence.
del govern
The
empresonats
members
i els
of
que són a
imprisoned
l'exili
members and those
i
who are
els
in exile,
representants de les dues
and the
entitats de la
representatives from the
societat
two
civil, Jordi Cuixart i
representations
Jordi
of
Sánchez,
civil
que
society,
fa 38
Jordi
dies
Sanchez and Jordi
estan a la
Cuixart, who
presó
have been in prison for
fruit
38 days
d'aquest
today.
atemptat.
We want to dedicate this event to them.
Abans, però, de donar la
Before
paraula
that,
als
before
convidats
giving the
d'aquest
floor
acte,
to our
i malgrat les
speakers
circumstàncies,
today, and
deixeu-me dir que
despite
és un gran
circumstances, let me
plaer per mi
tell you that it's
ser
a great
avui
pleasure
aquí
for me to be
per
here
celebrar
today
el
to
30è
celebrate the 30th
de
anniversary
LingüaPac.
of LingüaPacs,
I que és un gran honor
and that it is a
presidir
great
aquesta
honor
entitat
to
que
preside
durant
over
els seus
this
30 anys d'història
entity,
ha
this
esdevingut
body
una
that
organització
throughout
que
its 30
consolida
years of history has been
una organització
consolidating
referencial
as a
en l'àmbit
referent
de la diversitat.
organization in the field of language
La seva
diversity and peace.
trajectòria ha estat marcada per tres
Its
etapes
career
d'importància.
has had three highlights.
La primera
The first one
correspondria a l'època
corresponding to the foundational
Va trobar
time,
experts
which
convocada
was
per
the
la UNESCO
gathering
el
of
1977,
experts in Kiev,
sota el lema
organized by the
L'ensenyament
UNESCO,
de les llengües estrangeres
for
per a la pau i
about the teaching of foreign languages for peace. Was the origin of LingüaPacs. This initial phase focused on encouraging multilingual education in order to achieve peace and international understanding. The learning of foreign languages was important to open the perspectives and it helped those make students aware about language diversity in the world by giving these communication tools that are languages to the service of understanding and solidarity. The idea was that if all language communities, regardless of their size or of their political power, or not very much advanced in technical terms, could have guarantees for the future, and this was a great contribution to the culture of peace. That's why we needed to encourage the learning of languages, not only as a means for communication, but also as a means for intercultural relationship, because the relationship between culture and language is substantial. The third phase would come from the organization in Barcelona in 1994 of the fourth LingüaPacs meeting on behalf here at the UNESCO Center in Catalonia until 1999, when Mayor Zaragoza left the UNESCO. This phase was characterized by a clear willingness from the UNESCO to get involved in the projection of languages and encouragement of multicultural education. And that, thanks to Joseph Claude, the director of the new language division, LingüaPacs underwent a double transformation. It stopped being a European project and becomes a worldwide program. while changing its objective. The advice in language policies, the attention to the needs of several communities were added to the initial proposal. The third phase was started with the creation in 2001 of the GNO Lingua Pacts, with the objective of giving continuity to the projects or programs that the UNESCO stopped leading. Then the network of delegations was started so that Lingua Pacts is configured as an organization promoting actions that are adapted to the needs of different world context and organizes international and local events in favor of language diversity as a contribution to democracy, human rights, sustainability and peace. Throughout these years, then, Lingua Pacts has been consolidating as a network of experts and activists with knowledge and expertise to diagnose problems and formulating technical and political recommendations and proposing models of language coexistence, at the same time as looking for alternatives to language colonization, trying to prevent the passivity with which some processes aim at reducing diversity by offering advice to grassroots community, governmental and non-governmental organizations, as we could give some examples of the modalities of joint action with the UNESCO, with the participation of initiatives in the European Union or the Council of Europe, or in the European Bureau for Languages, of the African Academy for Languages, or as a full member of the Red de Cooperación Multilingüe for Latin American countries. In the non-governmental field, we need to mention the participation of the PEN Club International, working for ethnic minorities, or for the UNESCO chairs for language and culture. Lingua Pacts also honors organizations and personalities that have stand out, such as professors and activists, through the International Award Lingua Pacts, the first that acknowledges the preservation of the language heritage, the revitalization of language communities, and the promotion of multilingualism. But the best way to make a history visible, covering almost a third of a century, is to examine the current number of members at Lingua Pacts. They are heirs of a history and ambassadors of the organization in all continents, and they are the ones who preserve the present and the future, a future that we want to face starting from the work done in the previous 30 years and gathering voices that open new perspectives, linking languages with cultural dynamics in the present. This need to revise concepts, discourses and actions to adapt to the current environment has made us to frame this 30th anniversary seminar as the beginning of a long-term work program with some strategies that have been renovated. First of all, and along the lines of its foundational line, and as an organization linked to UNESCO, now we are a consultative organization and aligned with the guidelines of the United Nations. It takes its actions to the 2030 agenda. Some of the objectives of which refer directly to languages as a factor of sustainable development. We understand that the global agendas for development cannot reach its recipients until they speak their own language, and our contribution has to consist in making governments and organizations aware that we need to invest in the development of local languages through multilingual education based on quality resources on those languages that are familiar to students, and through the production of digital content in such languages, because the marginalization of its speakers is not perpetuated by the lack of information, because 90% of languages in the world are excluded from school and from the generation of knowledge tools, and a very high percentage of people who speak them don't speak enough or don't know enough of the official languages of their own countries, even if it is taken for granted that this is the means of communication between the government and its citizens. Therefore, we cannot be happy with only preserving the languages of the world, but we need to work to encourage its learning, the development of content, and the development of tools and resources, and relate everything with a wider agenda for development of dissemination through multidisciplinary partnerships that contribute to generate multilingual ecosystems with a great diversity. In order to go over the paradigm of static communities in their territories and taking into account that diversity is present worldwide and simultaneously as a consequence of human movement, and in the field of peace and its relationship with language diversity, we want to explore the different concepts of peace and do it with the cooperation of entities working in the environment of peace, cooperation, with involvement of experts in international law and other disciplines, and making it explicit the potential of peace generation deriving from this approach to language diversity, with its relevance in the configuration of a new cultural landscape, especially in contemporary cities. LinguaPax wants to participate in the current context, not as just a coordinator and facilitator of projects, of external projects, but as a generator of discourse in the international context by taking advantage of the power of its network of relationships in order to increase its scope and increase cooperation with other entities that help us to lead proposals aiming at the visibilization of cultural diversity and that can be given value to in other fields. In this new phase, LinguaPax tries to advance in the promotion and activation of language diversity by encouraging especially this last aspect, the activation of diversity, as an added value and a differentiating factor that implies not only awareness and defense, but making it relevant, activating it and making a proactive discourse that translates these efforts into an exciting message for the whole of society. That's why one of the main objectives that we are proposing now is to contribute to place in the public agenda of governments and international institutions the acknowledgement of cultural and language diversity, so that it is put in a central place, and doing it by opening a discussion and making it visible in a transactional way in different aspects of social and cultural life. In last year's seminar, Language and Status, we started this process by reflecting on the regulation of the language fact and in the policies aimed at safeguarding and the encouragement of use of the own languages. In today's seminar, we will see what future we can expect in the treatment of language diversity and a reflection on where we stand after 2 decades of sensitization on the value of this diversity. Now that language landscapes are constantly changing, we want to analyze how these new scenarios of human communication are going to affect our experience. Everything to revise and update if necessary old ideas and to not stop exploring new ways of working in favor of languages, and in such an important way of memories and projections, I would like to highlight the presence of Madame Victim Esbogadottir, former president of Ireland. Despite the fact that she has been able to participate in this 30th anniversary presentially, she has been willing to participate because her presence as an honorary president of Lingua Pax, because of her relationship with our entity, allows us to make a special acknowledgement to her task in favor of language diversity. She has been devoted to it, and the city of a center founded in Reykjavik, the Vigdis International Center for Multilingualism and Intercultural Understanding. I would also say hello and to thank the presence of Mr. Felix Martí, the co-founder or honorary president of Lingua Pax, because of all his tasks leading Lingua Pax and because of the his legacy. And I would also like to thank him especially that with his words he wanted to contribute to the celebration of this 30th anniversary. We have asked him to do it because of his such a predominant role in the creation of Lingua Pax. Well, I could say many things about his long career in Lingua Pax, but if I had to choose one of the many contributions he's made, perhaps I would say the creation in 1994 of the Lingua Pax International Committee, which was the core and the essence of Lingua Pax. Thank you very much for everything, Mr. Martí. We will also have Ingarda Kasiskaiten, who will represent the Division of Communication and Information from the UNESCO. Because of a problem with her flight, she will be a bit late, but we'll listen to her. She will show the objectives and the lines of work from her sector and projects related to the encouragement of multidiversity. And she will tell us about how they are planning the Indigenous Language Year in 2019, and I also want to show my gratitude to the experts who will be here presenting their speeches because of their presence in Barcelona. At the end of this session, as you can see from the agenda, we'll give the award, the Lingua Pax International Award, which is one of the most important and emotional times. In this case, we're going to give the award to Matthias Brenzinger, who is among us. Welcome to Barcelona. Benvingut a Barcelona, senyor Brenzinger.
Member of our community. A tots els assistents,
to all the audience, thank you for being here, and we're going to invite you to participate after all speeches so that you help us to obtain or to find the best proposals in order to guarantee the presence of the different languages in the world, so that they are the real transmission bells of communication among peoples and the keys for dialogues for living in peace. Thank you very much and good morning.
En primer lloc, dono la paraula al senyor Fèlix Martí.
So, Mr. Felix Martí is going to take the floor and he's going to address us some words.
Bon dia a tothom. Director general.
Good morning, General Manager, specialists and experts in the preservation of language diversity. I think it's great that LinguaPax proposes to do a balance on 3 decades of activism in favor of world language diversity, and that they ask us to closely analyze the globalization processes, and that they invite us to imagine emerging scenarios which may help or hinder the future of the language heritage of humankind. So we should start by saying that we shouldn't think that languages aren't exclusively instruments of communication. In the current world, there's a fascination, an excessive fascination for communication technologies. Words flow as passive units which are dominated by algorithms that are in machines. So currently, with our computers, we can access networks which are the new sacred arcs of information. But computers don't record. What the computers cannot record doesn't seem to have any value. Most of texts which are shown on television, for example, are contaminated as political propaganda artifacts or just to make money. So in a world which is trying to commoditize everything, there's no space for the loving and free word. Words have been hijacked by communication technologies and they seem to be frozen. They lose their intention. They are far from the passions which create them, and they're not used with the silences that preserve their mystery. So contemporary information and communication don't show any sincerity. They are not programmed to remove the post-truth. They try to be neutral, but they ignore human suffering or the joy of freedom. Maybe poetry or prose, song, and art which try to speak without sophistication are still the most humanizing languages. We already know that languages are interpretations of reality. We love language diversity because each language is an original repository of knowledge. We can be wiser if we have access to the diverse epistemologies which distinguish languages. But in languages, as the philosopher Josep Maria Esquirol explains, languages are much more essential regarding their affective and existential function, and not the one regarding the truth. This function, the function of truth, which is understood as the correspondence between proposition and reality. So the main function of language is the one that's looking for an understanding between the parties. Habermas had already indicated the importance of the communication action, which is creating relations, which is different from the instrumental or strategic function. So from this perspective, we can move towards an anthropology that, when defining the human person, doesn't just refer to his rational informative ability, but also a dialogue rationality which creates proximity, contact, and complicity between persons. We can see this often in the satisfactory character of the art of speaking naturally and openly between friends and neighbors. And the opposite of this vision of language are the instrumental or strategic functions. And when they become dominion or violence or misleading. So, with words, with a dialogue that creates mutual respect or basic consensus, we can build societies and cultures of peace. So when words go wrong due to lies or an ideological overload, we see violence. Words, that is, languages, are powerful instruments for peace. So I'll repeat some of the things the President has said on the history of lingua pax to add more data. Lingua pax started as a series of seminars on languages and education. They met in Kiev in 1987. There was a group of experts, among them Mikhail Sigwan, who alerted public opinion on the mistakes of the education systems, which really didn't love multilingual languages or education, and they didn't really focus on protecting the mother tongues. So UNESCO included gradually the issue of protection of language diversity in their programs. When Federico Mayor became the Director General between 1987 and 1999, he created the Division of Languages and the board of the UNESCO for linguistic pluralism and multilingual education. So then the advisors, the expert advisors of UNESCO and political figures like Vigdis Finnbogadottir were clear that the preservation of the language heritage of humanity needed a big-scale operation, which hasn't happened yet or enough to respond to the processes. So a working plan had to be done, which included contributions from the people responsible in the country for language policy, social linguists, educators, the managers of media, businessmen, and NGOs. This was the ambition of the initial UNESCO plan. But unfortunately, the plan was short-lived. Some people don't know what happened, but what happened is that some member states of UNESCO thought that it was politically destabilizing. So the language division was removed when Federico Mayor ended his term. A Catalan NGO, the Centre UNESCO de Catalunya, decided to continue with this lingua pax philosophy and to maintain part of the program of the division. So luckily the Basque government provided funding which had been borne by the government of Catalonia since 2001. The government that is now unjustly imprisoned. The most visible yearly activity, the one of Lingua Pax back then, the activity that we're very satisfied with is the International Lingua Pax Award. As the President has said, today the award will be given to Matthias Brenzen,
Centre per la Diversitat de les Llengües Africanes de Cape Town.
the African Language Diversity of Cape Town. So I think that the intuitions of Lingua Pax are more relevant now than 30 years ago. I'm talking about 30 years ago because that's when this adventure started, and I'll talk about some of these intuitions. First, the need to agree on a new model of global language coexistence. It's not enough with protection projects for weak languages which have been colonized or marginalized, or a few programs to foster this language approach. We have to have a model which determines the criteria of fair coexistence between all language communities. So, instruments have to be created to promote language rights, which include personal rights, collective rights, and territorial rights. All languages, not just a few, have to be declared a heritage of humanity. Language policies have to be fostered at all levels that allow to create harmonic relationships between all communities. We have to help language communities with their needs, the cross-border communities. We are now holding this Congress in a language community which is spoken in the 3 states. New ways to manage the growing linguistic complexity have to be managed. Privileges of imposed languages have to be substituted with legislation which focus essentially on discriminated languages. We have to fight against the language prejudice and promote multilingual education, both among the minority communities and speakers of the languages with more people who speak them. I won't say that this hasn't been solved, but it's not really approached yet. So the learning of desirable multilingualism includes local languages, which often but not always coincide with mother tongues, because sometimes the demand for importance of the mother tongue don't take into account the rights that belong to the history and the territory of some languages. Secondly, we have to drive international observation and protection mechanisms to have language justice. International institutions have to promote conventions and control mechanisms which are required. Both organizations of the system of the United Nations and also regional organizations could be more effective if they had the cooperation both in programs and in technical capacities of NGOs. The entities of civil society can help analyze the global problems in this area, define projects, and implement them in the field. Lingua Pax, during these 30 years of life, has partially achieved it together with UNESCO and thinks it's positive. And there was a successful cooperation with the Universal Forum of Cultures in 2004 when they organized the Lingua Pax 10 Congress on language diversity, sustainability, and peace. And now it's participating as a full member of RESIM, which has been mentioned by the President, the Network for Multilingual Intercultural Cooperation, which is constituted by Latin American countries. So there's a lot of possibilities to cooperate between state governments. Lingua Pax tries to contribute things which follow two essential criteria. That policies have to affect all government administrations, and language communities have to have structures of self-government which are enough and sufficient to establish and develop their own objectives. In these 30 years, Lingua Pax has contributed technically to initiatives of the governments of China, Paraguay, Croatia, Cambodia, India, and Tibet in exile. So the antenna of Lingua Pax for Africa, which has its headquarters in Yaoundé, has regularly held Pan-African congresses in cooperation with the governments of the region and DACALAN, the African Academy of Languages, which was created by the African Union. And now I'd like to mention two prominent figures, African figures who died, are international awards for Lingua Pax, Maurice Tategé and Neville Alexander, who understood the importance of using the energies of governments and NGOs and had complementary responsibilities in ACALAN and Lingua Pax. Thirdly, we have to say that our project to protect global language diversity and the establishment of peace culture wouldn't be possible without multiple specialized initiatives in different thematic areas and geographies. There's work to be done by all, but the secret of their success is how they are done. We can help each other in the analysis of the problems that we want to solve, in the definition of the big shared goals, and the design of effective strategies. Lingua Pax, after these 30 years, has become richer thanks to people and organizations who are diverse. We're honored to have with us today people from the Foundation for Endangered Languages, the International Center Carré for Ethnic Minorities, International Pen Club, Rising Voices, Global Voices, the Platform for Language, and the universities of London, Pennsylvania, Barcelona, Indiana, Lleida, Cologne, and prominent members of different language communities. So we hope that our networks can grow, that our funding improves, and that our action is as popular as the fight for the environment. And some final ideas. What we're really working in is a domain which is essential to safeguard the cosmic diversity. We know that languages are the most evolved manifestations of the human species. They're the highest expression of the processes which allow known reality to mature. We are better than robots. We're better than intelligent machines. The connections between the initiatives to protect language heritage and being environmentally militant makes us think about the necessary relationship with other movements for freedom in our times. Life and harmony between languages have a future only if political power is not following economic power, which is protected by tax havens and corrupt governments. They have a future if we don't approach human rights from a relative perspective and we accept the assassination of their defenders in dozens of countries now. We'll have a future if we remove violence and fanaticism, if we show solidarity in the fight against the discrimination of women, which is very so difficult to accomplish, if we welcome immigrants, if we are not isolated from poor people in each country, continent, and the world. Languages will live if freedoms progress and the recognition of dignity of all people and all countries. But we have to be aware that all human communities evolve very quickly and they become multicultural, multi-religious, and multilingual. We will have to find new ways to manage diversity with strategies to agree on values, symbols, and shared identities. It's not enough with having a coexistence which democratically acknowledges rights of majorities or having acceptable and if we have to find laws and the statutes which are acceptable and amenable to all minorities will be the most important challenge in the next decades. We will have to defeat the prestige of uniformity, and we should learn to enjoy life in complex societies because they offer opportunities for other points of view and knowledge. They allow to apply critical thinking and self-criticism with good humor. They can expand freedoms and ethics codes. They foster greater creative imagination and invite to a discovery, an unexpected discovery of fascinating universes. So this is the joy that we try to live by sharing the philosophy of Lingua Pax, the joy of cultural diversity and linguistic or language diversity. Thank you very much.
Gràcies, Fèlix.
Thank you, Felix.
Passarem a la
Now
salutació de la Victis Fimbogadottir.
we will hear the salute by Vigdis Fimbogadottir.
Distinguished audience, dear friends in Lingua Pax.
Estimats amics a LinguaPax,
Greetings from Iceland,
us
from where the bacalao so
envio una
easily
salutació
found
des
its way
d'Islàndia
before the days to your shores in Barcelona.
perquè no puc assistir a Barcelona.
Commemorated
in
the name of
el-
the square in your distinctive city. Allow me first of all
Permeteu-me, abans de res, donar-vos felicitar a LinguaPax pel seu aniversari i donar les gràcies a aquestes institucions per
work during the last 3 decades. Safeguarding languages is indeed no easy task in an increasingly open world, where cosmopolitanism has been promoting the so-called big languages and the message that they should be spoken and understood by all. Our language is our identity, wherever we are in the world. It is a treasure chest preserving our ancestors' knowledge, not the least of our immediate surroundings, wherever we live in the world. Our language is our identity, wherever we are in the world. The treasure chest preserving our ancestors' knowledge, not the least of our immediate surroundings. Wherever we live in the world, it links us to our precious natural environment, which is today so vulnerable everywhere. And language is our tool for creativity in literary or other fields. Intercultural understanding is becoming ever more important in our increasingly globalized world. Many of the serious problems facing the international community, such as the global warming, the increasing gap between rich and poor, and gender inequality, can only be solved through international cooperation. Effective cooperation in turn demands communicative ability across linguistic diversity and cultural literacy. Items which have from the very beginning headed our Lingua Pax agenda. We need understanding and language to negotiate peace in the world, not arms. In Iceland, we are extremely proud of having kept alive one of the oldest living languages spoken in Europe, the language of the medieval sagas, often called the Latin of the North. But unlike Latin, it still flourishes as a living language today, and it does so because it's used not only to preserve the past and all the literacy treasures of bygone centuries, but to enable us to embrace modernity. Our language enables us to celebrate the unique characteristics that set us as a nation apart from the rest of the world. The colorful lexis and the transparent construction of the old language makes it relatively easy to create new Icelandic words for new inventions. It's a language large in scope, although spoken by relatively few. Dear friends in Lingua Pax, I always recall with great pleasure my work with Lingua Pax throughout the years, the conferences in Barcelona, the stimulating exchanges, and not least many an inspiring discussion with Mr. Felix Martí, a colleague from our mutual UNESCO years. In closing, may I express my warmest thanks and sincere appreciation of your friendship and the honor you have shown me.
Moltes gràcies. És molt
Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's been great to have. We would have liked to have her with us during these 2 days, but she couldn't attend now. Mrs. Kasiskaite arrived on time, so we'll give her the floor. So she represents the division of Communication and Information sector of UNESCO, and she will do her presentation.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I just arrived from Paris. It's always nice to be in Barcelona. So sunny, so fresh, nice people. Really happy to be with you here. And I would like to thank Mrs. Monica Perez for this kind invitation. And as well, I would like to say hello to those who I know from previous meetings and work together. So I hope that we'll enjoy those 2 days here, and we'll learn from each other, and we'll share our experience, and hopefully we'll come with new ideas how we can improve linguistic diversity in the world. At the same time, I would like as well to convey best greetings from my colleagues in Paris, from UNESCO, who are not able to join us today, and we convey their best greetings. And I would like to start my intervention by quoting the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. The Article 2 states that everyone is entitled to all the rights and freedoms set forth in this declaration, without discrimination and distinction of any kind, such as race, sex, color, language, and religion. The freedom of speech, freedom of expression, and freedom of choice to use a language for a given purpose are interlinked and protected under international normative law as human rights and fundamental freedoms. However, 70 years later, after the adoption of the declaration, speakers of many languages around the world, especially those which speak lesser used languages and languages which are in danger, are still facing a lot of challenges.
Since human rights and sustainable development are the basis for UNESCO's work, the promotion of linguistic rights is also one of our core targets. This work is done under broader context, is linked with broader context. UNESCO promotes a new vision of knowledge societies, which contributes to well-being of individuals and communities, which is based on core principles of openness, inclusion, participation, and diversity. We believe that knowledge societies could be constructed if they are built on 4 major pillars. Let's start with the first one, access to quality education, including quality education in different languages, including communities who speak smaller languages, less dominant minority languages, indigenous languages and communities. Freedom of expression is a second one. Access to information, multilingual information and knowledge around the world using different information communication technologies and other tools. And last but not least, cultural and linguistic diversity. In the current era, when information and knowledge are predominance of empowerment, language allows the transmission of knowledge and information from one generation to another. That's why languages, or in other words, let's say local knowledge and knowledge transmitted in different languages are crucial for development of pluralistic, equitable, open, and inclusive societies. Let us think about the role of languages in society. There are many roles, and I would like to touch upon on 4 at least what I selected for this presentation. It's a human heritage, first of all, which still needs to be protected, which still needs to be documented and revitalized. In 2001, Fishman said, "A traditionally associated language is more than just a tool of communication for its culture, but it's often viewed as a very specific gift, a mark of identity, a specific responsibility vis-à-vis new generations. Each language has its own way of thinking. Each language carries its own knowledge and perspectives. Language is as well a local knowledge system. We find many cases around the world where language embraces a large number of traditional or indigenous knowledge, which only the speakers of this language have shared or share at the moment. Wherefore, if one language disappears from the world, the knowledge embracing this language will disappear together. Language is as well as communication system, which we use to make ourselves understood, engage and involved, and participate in different social, cultural, political activities. Moreover, language is seen as a regional or national economic resource, as it affects citizens' quality of life, professional occupation, and participation in society at large. So, what is the relationship between language and development? We all speak a lot at international level about sustainable development goals. And in order to answer this question, I would like first to share with you a few examples, what I selected about the importance of language for development, and how often we do not respect or do not take into consideration language as a key element for development. The first example is from Africa. When Ebola fever broke out in West Africa in 2015, language was one of the main barriers and difficulties for humanitarian workers, including UN system, because a lot of preventive information about Ebola was primarily available in English and French, which are the two main languages spoken and used in international sphere, where a lot of information we find, where it would be scientific information, public information, policy-related information. And at the same time, only few people in the territory, around 20%, understood either language in the affected regions. So it was very difficult for humanitarian workers to reach out and pass the necessary preventive information to protect local communities because of the language barrier. In reality, it was not a language barrier, it's just only what we did not respect linguistic diversity in a specific region. Second example comes from Latin America, and it's linked as well to Zika virus, which widely spread across Americas in 2016. If we compare UNESCO's Atlas of Languages in Danger, and we would zoom it in the geographical territory where the Zika virus was spread, and where we have information about languages in danger, which were information collected together, working with a number of experts, we could see it very clearly, but in this large territory, there is a huge number of speakers using languages which are different from some dominant languages, such as Spanish and Portuguese. This is why it was difficult to provide accurate public information to those communities, and not necessarily we were able to follow information which was provided in dominant languages. Wherefore, those who don't master, don't speak, don't use dominant languages, very often we remain isolated. The third example is from the cyberspace. The influence of dominant languages is more graphed today than ever. In 2017, this year, we see it that nearly 900 million people are using internet around the world and use in foreign languages. Very often, it is a lack of quality resources and tools in the native languages. Relatively small languages tend to be forgotten in the current globalized world when the influence of a handful of dominant languages or languages getting stronger. Very often, it's a question as well of economic aspects, profit-related aspects, where it is not really interesting for private sector to develop tools which would be available in local languages or smaller languages. So, language is crucial for ensuring peace and sustainable development around the world. And those few examples that I demonstrated and shared with you will just indicate that we have to take into consideration linguistic diversity in any aspect of our life. At the same time, there are only a few language-related aspects in the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and related goals. One of the reasons is a lack of data. We were not able to provide and convince people around the world who made decisions that there is a need to address linguistic diversity in a broader global agenda. And I would like, at the same time, to take this opportunity to thank all the experts here present who were involved in creation of UNESCO Atlas of Languages in Danger, because it provides some data about language engagement around the world, which could be used to convince policymakers, decision makers, opinion leaders, what language matters for development. There are at the moment 2,680 languages registered on UNESCO's Atlas, and you can find this on our online platform. Earlier this year, we analyzed the data together with some experts, and we came to the following conclusions. Some of them were quite obvious, but that's very interesting to see what it was supported with data, which we collected over the last 10 years. So depending on the number of languages around the world, where we would take it approximately 7,000, 40% already registered on UNESCO Atlas are endangered. A different level of endangerment, of course, and the rest of 60% is either dominant, or we could call it safe, or minority languages without reliable information and figures. Wherefore, it's not easy to place language as an issue on the global agenda when we cannot illustrate with reliable statistics. The database as well provided information about the number of language speakers, and the majority of languages registered on UNESCO's Atlas have only fewer than 10,000 speakers left. Another important finding was the number of endangered languages was increasing over last years. And in some countries, language endangerment concerns a very large population. Wherefore, the measures in those countries needs to be taken urgently in order to protect, document, and revitalize languages, as well as support language speakers. This is why we need to work together, to work hard on language issues as a way of promoting human rights and ensuring peace and development. Just a few words about new developments that we have at UNESCO. Some of you are aware that UNESCO is developing a new version of the Atlas, and we would call it Atlas of Languages, of all world languages, including those which are considered to be safe and dominant. Our focus is from endangerment to empowerment. It means not only preservation, it's not only protection, documentation of languages, but also dissemination, promotion, application of new communication information tools, as well as empowerment of language speakers will be taken into consideration. To achieve this goal, there is a need for more interdisciplinary policies and actions involving different stakeholders and building capacities of speakers. We cannot do it alone as an international organization. We need to do it together if we want to place language as on sustainable development or new development agendas. So we have to work together. I would like as well to tell you that a new version will be available to different stakeholders who would like to contribute with data, who would like to share data and disseminate. Moreover, we are planning to include sign languages linking to the implementation of other international instruments, such as United Nations Convention on the Rights of People with Disabilities. In this way, we believe that we will provide more holistic view about linguistic diversity in the world and supply the community, international community, with more reliable data for a new revision of global agenda. UNESCO continues as well promoting linguistic diversity and multilingualism in cyberspace through its normative instrument. In 2003, our General Conference adopted recommendation concerning the promotion and use of multilingualism and universal access to cyberspace, which is one of the few very unique international normative instruments which require our member states to take concrete measures for the promotion and use of multilingualism and access to cyberspace. And we monitor this process. In parallel with the development World Atlas of Languages, UNESCO is involved in the organization of 2019 International Year of Indigenous Languages. This is a very important opportunity for all of us, as it is a follow-up to United Nations General Assembly resolution, which was adopted last year in December, which invites all stakeholders interested to work together and implement a number of joint activities for the promotion of indigenous languages around the world. And if there are those who are interested to work with us, I would be very happy to talk after this presentation. And in conclusion, we build future scenarios, as it is the main subject, the theme of this conference, of the event in Barcelona, upon existing thinking, achievements, and on present lessons, as well as on new partnerships, new vision, and dedication. So thank you very much for your attention and kind invitation.
Thank you very much for your words. And now it's the turn of Alicia Fuentes, que és la directora de LinguaPax, que us adreçarà unes paraules sobre la conferència.
Bon dia. Amb aquesta sessió, que ja veieu el programa que tractarà sobre una petita introducció de la conferència, una petita presentació, el que farem és el pont, la transició entre aquesta inauguració històrica i solemne que hem tingut amb aquests bons amics i els auguris i les grans paraules que hem tingut i els continguts pròpiament de les sessions. No abans sense agrair l'esforç i l'èxit d'haver pogut reunir amb nosaltres a tots aquests representants acadèmics i d'organitzacions
to have all these people meeting here who will make this seminar a very productive one. I don't know whether you've read the presentation text for the session. In the introduction of today's agenda, we included some words by Mary-Louise Pratt, and she says, I started to suspect that the absence of reflection on languages is a condition of possibility for the creators of knowledge of globalization, the foundational silence that allows to imagine globalization as it is being imagined. This is a fragment from her work, Traveling Languages. So it is foundational silencing, another element of our times, and because of different reasons, many of us here who have a special curiosity towards this topic, and we devote ourselves to this topic. And in this seminar, we're going to hear different perspectives, different approaches about language diversity, which is our honorary president has made, Felix Martin. He has gone over the multiplicity of agents that have participated in different seminars by LinguaPax, how the need to articulate this plurality of stakeholders. We have the academia, and as you know, we have different professors here today. We have international organizations. You've seen that we've had the voice of ambassador, willing ambassadors and representative from Society of Information. We have hybrid academic programs, as Peter Austin, for instance, today, about engaged humanities. We have non-governmental organizations like Global Voices, LinguaPax, without forgetting entities represented by you, the attendees and members of the audience, and, university research groups and governmental organizations with the representative from our councillors. But in this session, we not only are going to hear these traditional fields about language diversity, but we also want to nourish it of how this diversity is experienced by citizens from the citizenship. In this case, we're going to have, with a separate session, but which is linked to all this cycle of conferences, we have tomorrow a panel about spirituality and languages, and where we're going to have a specific example of how languages are experienced from spirituality. So what we want to do is that the importance not only lies on the topic itself, but highlighting that language diversity is not only a question of grammar, dictionaries, and these closed languages that we sometimes think are from the European perspective, but ways of experiencing communication. But I also think about another factor of this perspective of citizenship, which is the award, the LinguaPax, this year. And even, he started as a young German citizen who tried to understand other ways of being in the world. That was the driving force of his biographies, and that was the curiosity about the world created by diverse cultures. All these voices that we showed today at a very small scale, because only have the morning and this afternoon, highlight a point of a unilateral point of globalization, which is the silencing of languages in the world. Unilateral globalization, as many authors, post-colonial authors, highlight, understood as a process originated by one side of the world, with some particular epistemologies. It is in this atmosphere that we can place the discussion about languages, as it has been narrated in the academia, that focuses in two poles. On the one hand, the menaced diversity and strategies to revitalize it, and in the other, the big vehicular tools. So we're going to start by listening to presentations by speakers such as Peter Austin and Nicholas Osler, and with the a program of alternative humanities, and in the Foundation for Endangered Languages. We had the occasion last April in the International Progress of Language Revitalization that was celebrated at the University of Barcelona with Gela, here is Pere Cumellas and other colleagues here, in the cooperation of the University of Vic and the University of Indiana University. From those dialogues and informal talks with participants, some ideas, shared ideas emerged, and we reached some kind of consensus that we might be able to discuss today with the experts. We could talk about two basic elements. One, that in the one hand, revitalization of languages is just a formula. Languages that become like a souvenir of the past. not bonded with communication or for expression from emotion, as Felix Martí was saying, but for the escenification, staging of languages. They become like dramatic resources in the sense of a play, of drama. It is not the general case, but we were thinking that perhaps the revitalization process was designed from the paradigm of certain languages, but its efficacy is not guaranteed in general terms. The intrusion of this fact was a discussion, a living dialogue that remained open. And we had this bittersweet feeling about this revitalization of languages when we have people are more utopian or more pragmatic. Perhaps we can discuss about this with Austin and Osler. Another classical question in the origin of this discussion that you may have heard several times and that has been discussed in many different ways. It is like the monolingual ideology that very often is treated as a massive destruction tool for native communities, but also as a dangerous tool even with the best intentions, because it works for languages understood by languages made from different other languages and with different semiotic terms. So how do communities communicate is what should interest and not projecting our closed idea of solid languages that sometimes is thrown like stones, but the ideology that goes behind, that is underlying this representation. So we'll hear about this field also from Kamal Khan, and we will get close to some scenarios where we'll see different news of representing languages with the panel of Kamal Khan, Eddie Avila, and Susan Herring, emerging forms where we will hear about translinguistics, translanguage, super diversity, and those of you who are more aware of the new literature, or the new academic terms, are more aware of these new fashion terms that are used for describing what happens in contemporary societies, especially those with a long tradition for diversity. Phenomena that have been written about for years in multicultural societies. I would also like to mention here two members from the Scientific Committee of Lingua Pax who have left a strong imprint, which is Anika Tandali, Neville Alexander from South Africa, who has already appeared. I would also like to highlight the privilege of having with these voices that shed some light in the present and future of languages. We still have to overcome the fear of not finding or not thinking that faraway cultures are not a source of contemporary knowledge. So we are pleased to hear these voices, but we sometimes feel that these are faraway perspectives. But if we want to be responsible with cultural diversity, we have to know that this is not so, that all knowledge is contemporary. And Chandani mentioned solidarity among languages and reciprocity, and we've also heard about this new line of work where they are not only including threatened languages, and it's not that we shouldn't only focus on endangered languages, but also on dangerous languages. And we were also reminded that there is not a single diversity, but many different ways of narrating different. And it's also a question that could be dealt with here and be put on the table during our discussions. Sometimes we think about a model of diversity that we want to encourage, and we colonize with our model. We colonize other territories where they have Alexander on his side was also thinking about culturing language diversities, and this acknowledgement that was celebrated of the officiality of 11 languages in the Constitution of South Africa was not enough to protect those languages, but it's he saw some kind of development when speaking different languages. So these perspectives that born from societies in Africa and Asia affect contemporary societies. This is what we are seeing today in European authors. So these meetings of Lingua Pax, where Alexander and Konstantini were present, I was there in 2 of them, together with other good voices from around the world. In these meetings, collective memory of these people added, and they were prophetic memory or future memory. So when talking to them, because well, they left us a few years ago, so we wanted to pay homage to them in this today's session. So our session is not a series of speeches about the latest news in language diversity, where this could be an end in itself, but we want to live it, to experience it with like an interchange among different people that from the academia and activism have chosen languages as an observatory to explore different territories of the human species and the adaptation to the planet. We will need to see other approaches in the future, and about the survival of marginalized communities, but also of the political potential and social linguistic imaginary and its power to explore multilateral globalization. And research on other languages forces us to foster different ways of thinking, which allow us to have an exterior view and vision of what we do, and allows us to put into question whether what we do makes sense in a wider context. So we don't have any presentation about what language is going to be used in the future, what it's used, and that some observers, long-term observers, let's not say pessimistics, but say that are disappearing. Vadiganes Devi, just a year ago, on the 23rd or 24th of November last year, here, said that these languages fall like dry leaves from trees because they are of no use to the world we are creating. So we'll need to think about these future languages as multilingual, multisensorial resources. And in any case, Lingua Pax wants to be a tool for creating context, a kind to cultural diversity. So that's why we look at languages from the framework of art, from philosophy, but we want this field to look at Lingua Pax and become interested in languages. And well, we've tried with seminars, with researchers, but this session, from this section we'll have the next session for Lingua Pax, and we are at your disposal in order to continue working together. Thank you.
Perdoneu. Ara tenim...
Now we have a coffee break outside for about 20 minutes. Downstairs. We have to go downstairs.